Every town has its secrets, buried beneath layers of time and whispers. Ours was no exception. As a child growing up in the sleepy hamlet of Willow Creek, I heard the tales of Midnight Circus. It was said to be a place where darkness danced under the moonlight, where specters roamed and souls were lost. Despite the warnings of my elders, curiosity consumed me. So, on a fateful autumn night, with the wind whispering secrets through the trees, I ventured into the heart of the forest where Midnight Circus was rumored to appear. The air grew colder with each step, the forest swallowing me whole. And then, emerging from the shadows like a specter itself, I saw it, the abandoned tent of Midnight Circus, its once vibrant colors faded into shades of gray. Ignoring the chill creeping down my spine, I pushed through the tattered entrance. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of decay, and a shiver ran down my spine as I realized I was not alone. A figure stood in the center of the tent, its form obscured by shadows. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. No answer came, only the sound of footsteps echoing through the empty space. Heart pounding, I pressed forward, determined to uncover the truth behind Midnight Circus. As I moved deeper into the tent, the darkness seemed to grow thicker, suffocating me with its presence. And then, I saw them, the specters of Midnight Circus, their ghostly forms swirling around me in a macabre dance. I tried to run, but my feet were rooted to the spot as if held in place by unseen hands. Panic consumed me as the specters closed in, their hollow eyes fixed upon me with a hunger I could not comprehend. And then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the specters vanished, leaving me alone in the darkness once more. Trembling, I stumbled out of the tent and into the cold embrace of the night. But the horrors of Midnight Circus did not end there. For in the days that followed, I was plagued by nightmares, visions of twisted figures and echoing laughter haunting my every moment. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination running wild, but deep down, I knew the truth. Midnight Circus was real, and its dark magic had taken hold of me. In a desperate attempt to break free from its grasp, I sought out the local wise woman, hoping she could offer some solace in the face of my terror. But when I told her of my encounter with Midnight Circus, her eyes grew wide with fear. "You have awakened forces beyond your understanding," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. She spoke of ancient curses and restless spirits, warning me that Midnight Circus was not to be trifled with. But her words offered little comfort, for I knew that the darkness had already claimed me as its own. Haunted by the memories of that fateful night, I resolved to confront Midnight Circus once more, to uncover the truth behind its sinister power. With trembling hands, I returned to the forest, the chill of impending doom hanging heavy in the air. And there, amidst the twisted trees and swirling mist, I found it, Midnight Circus, waiting for me like a beast hungry for its prey. Summoning all the courage I possessed, I stepped inside the tent, determined to face whatever horrors lay within. But as I crossed the threshold, time seemed to stand still, and I found myself transported to a realm of nightmares. The specters surrounded me once more, their twisted forms contorting in a grotesque parody of life. But this time, I did not cower in fear. Instead, I stood my ground, facing the darkness with a newfound resolve. With each step, I felt the weight of the curse lifting, the hold of Midnight Circus weakening with every breath. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the nightmare was over. I emerged from the tent battered and bruised, but alive. And as I looked out upon the forest bathed in the light of dawn, I knew that Midnight Circus had been vanquished, its dark magic broken by the strength of my will. But even now, as I sit by the fire recounting my tale, I can still feel the lingering chill of Midnight Circus, a reminder that some secrets are best left undisturbed, lest they consume us whole. As I sit here, the memory of that harrowing night still sends shivers down my spine. It was a chilling reminder of the thin veil between the world we know and the unknown, a reminder that some things should never be encountered. It was a midnight drive that turned into a descent into terror, and I can still feel the fear clawing at my mind as I recount the events. It was a moonless night, the kind that swallows everything in darkness. The only illumination came from the feeble glow of my headlights as they cut through the thick shadows crowding the road ahead. I was alone, driving down a deserted stretch of highway that wound its way through dense woods. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers grasping at the night. As I drove deeper into the darkness, a sense of unease began to settle over me. It was as if the air itself was heavy with an unseen presence, and a feeling of dread coiled in the pit of my stomach. But I brushed it off as mere nerves, chalking it up to the isolation of the road and the late hour. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of something moving in the trees. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, a shadow dancing in the darkness. But as I peered harder into the gloom, I realized that it was something else entirely. A figure stood among the trees, its form barely discernible in the dim light. It was tall and thin, with long limbs that seemed to stretch impossibly far. Its face was obscured by darkness, but I could feel its eyes boring into me with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. I slammed on the brakes, my heart pounding in my chest as I stared at the figure in horror. But as quickly as it had appeared, it was gone, swallowed up by the shadows once more. I sat there for a moment, trying to make sense of what I had seen, but the rational part of my mind refused to accept it. It must have been a trick of the light, I told myself, a figment of my imagination born from the darkness. Shaking off my unease, I pressed down on the accelerator and continued down the road. But no sooner had I started moving again than I heard it, a soft, plaintive wail echoing through the night. It was a sound unlike anything I had ever heard before, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead as I realized that I was not alone on that desolate road. Something was out there with me, something that defied explanation. And as the wail grew louder, I knew that whatever it was drawing closer. Panic surged through me as I floored the accelerator, desperate to put as much distance between myself and whatever lurked in the darkness. But no matter how fast I drove, the wail pursued me, its unearthly cry filling the night with dread. And then, just when I thought I couldn't bear it any longer, the road ahead seemed to shimmer and warp, as if bending to the will of some unseen force. I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop as I stared in disbelief at the impossible sight before me. The road had vanished, replaced by a yawning chasm that stretched out into the darkness below. I could feel the pull of it, a magnetic force that tugged at my very soul, threatening to drag me down into its depths. But it wasn't just the chasm that filled me with terror. It was what lurked within it, a writhing mass of shadow and malice that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. I could feel its malevolent gaze upon me, and I knew that if I stayed there a moment longer, I would be lost to it forever. With a primal scream of terror, I threw the car into reverse and spun away from the edge of the abyss. I drove faster than I ever had in my life, the wail still echoing in my ears as I raced towards the safety of civilization. And when I finally reached the outskirts of town, I pulled over to the side of the road and collapsed against the steering wheel, trembling with exhaustion and fear. I knew that what I had witnessed that night would stay with me forever, a reminder of the darkness that lurks just beyond the edge of our reality. To this day, I still can't explain what happened to me on that midnight drive. But one thing is for certain, I will never venture down that road again for fear of what might be waiting in the shadows. I never believed in ghosts. Not until I experienced the chilling presence that lurked within the walls of Oakwood Manor. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when my friends and I decided to explore the abandoned house on the outskirts of town. Oakwood Manor had been vacant for as long as I could remember. Its windows were shattered, its once grand facade now was crumbling with neglect. Rumors swirled about the property, tales of strange occurrences and sightings of shadowy figures dancing in the moonlight. But we laughed them off as the fanciful imaginings of superstitious townsfolk. As we pushed open the creaking gate and crossed the overgrown garden, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The air seemed to grow colder with each step we took towards the looming mansion. Despite my growing unease, I followed my friends inside, the floorboards groaning beneath our feet. The interior of Oakwood Manor was a scene of decay and abandonment. Dust had coated every surface, cobwebs hung from the ceiling like sinister tapestries, and the once elegant furniture lay in ruins. But what struck me the most was the oppressive atmosphere that hung heavy in the air, as though the house itself was alive and watching our every move. We wandered through the labyrinthine halls, our footsteps were echoing in the empty rooms. With each passing moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. It was as though unseen eyes were tracking our every move, and a sense of dread settled like a lead weight in the pit of my stomach. As we reached the grand staircase, a sudden chill filled the air, causing goosebumps to prickle on my skin. My friends exchanged nervous glances, but we pressed on, driven by a morbid curiosity to uncover the secrets of Oakwood Manor. It was then that we heard it. It was a soft whispering that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. My heart started pounding in my chest as I strained to make out the words, but they were just beyond the edge of comprehension, like distant echoes from another world. Fear clutched at my throat as we ascended the staircase, each step feeling like a descent into madness. Shadows danced on the walls, twisting and writhing in the dim light, and I felt a presence drawing closer with every passing moment. As we reached the top of the stairs, a sudden gust of wind extinguished our lantern, plunging us into darkness. Panic gripped me as I fumbled for a way out, my heart pounding in my ears like a drumbeat of doom. And then I saw it, a flickering light at the end of the hallway, beckoning us forward like a siren's song. With trembling hands, I reached out, desperate for the safety it promised. But as we drew closer, the light began to flicker and fade, leaving us once again shrouded in darkness. It was then that I felt it, a cold hand brushing against my cheek, sending a chill down my spine. I screamed, recoiling in terror as the presence surrounded us, suffocating us with its malevolence. In that moment of pure terror, I realized the truth, that the Oakwood Manor was not abandoned at all. It was alive with the spirits of the past, trapped within its walls for eternity. With a strength born of desperation, we fled from the accursed mansion, our hearts pounding in our chests as we raced into the night. But even as we left Oakwood Manor behind, I knew that its dark secrets would haunt me forever. From that day forth, I was a believer in the paranormal, for I had witnessed firsthand the horrors that lurked in the shadows of Oakwood Manor. And though I may never fully understand the mysteries of that cursed place, one thing remains certain: some truths are better left buried in the darkness, where they belong.